All right, APHUG. We have everything else this year. We'll have our first go at sick notes. I mean, your teacher is. I know you're thinking, wait, if you're able to do notes like this, why can't you be in class doing notes? But trust me, I don't have to project my voice doing this, and I get to lay on a couch. And I know you're jealous, but you're not jealous that you've that. I'm jealous of you if you're not feeling like I am right now. I'm going to get through the rest of these notes, so I'm going to go fairly quickly. All right, and just note that third and fourth period were in different places, and so I'm going to pick it up where third is, being there. We're a little bit behind fourth period, and so this is where we left off with third, fourth period, folks. If you want to just you can kind of fast forward to where you find where we are and just pick it up right there. All right. Okay, so for third period, we finished off on talking about here with environmental supranationalism. You're probably thinking, okay, so yeah, we have all these supranational corporations, and their corporate headquarters are in developed countries. What does that have to do with the environment? Well, that's why we're going to the next slide, and that is the idea that most of those corporations that are headquartered in developed countries, those supranationals, actually do all their manufacturing in less developed countries. Okay, or what we call the developing world. All right, and they do that because of a few things. First of all, kind of we've been talking about, they won't have to pay people who work there as much money as they'd have to pay if they were trying to do that manufacturing in the United States. And then if we add in C, if you're operating manufacturing here in the United States, you have a lot of rules and regulations you have to follow. You can't be spewing a bunch of garbage into the skies, kind of like the picture you see over there on the left. You can't be allowing pollution to seep into the water system. In some of those developing countries, they don't have those kind of laws or those regulations. And in some of those countries, they are fine to allow pollution to happen if it means more of their people will actually be employed. Because unlike us in some of those other countries, they have employment problems, and so anything that is going to create a job, if it comes at a huge environmental cost, that's a cost they're willing to pay in exchange for people being employed and being able to put food on the table and that sort of thing. Okay, that's where we get the environmental end of it. All right, shifting gears, devolution or devolution. I guess if you want to go on the Devo side of it, for those of you that are 80s music fans. If you're not an 80s music fan, what are you waiting for? I don't know. Anyhow, what is devolution? Well, there's your straightforward definition of it right there. Okay, this transfer of power. And how I want you to think about it is kind of when you have power of a central government controlling a state or a country, and what happens when that power starts to kind of break up and starts going to kind of different maybe little regions, that kind of thing. We'll look at lots of like little historic examples, and some that are still going on in current times to help you to understand what a devolutionary movement is, or what devolution looks like in action. But I'll give you a hint. You live in a country who has some devolution as part of our very origin story. Okay. So again, we'll look at some examples here, and I'm going to start you off with looking at devolution through kind of a physical geography lens. We'll return back to our little example of Kashmir that we were talking about earlier in the unit as an example of a shatter belt. A small little region that's wedged in between both Pakistan and India, and sometimes has been kind of this flashpoint for violence, because these are two countries that have had conflicts with each other, and both of them would like to see Kashmir be part of their country, and it gets complicated. Well, on top of that, Kashmir is also this little region that is also wedged right up against the Himalaya mountains, and that creates a certain sense of isolation for Kashmir. And that isolation, them wanting to not be isolated, can contribute to devolutionary movement, which would be for them, to want to attach themselves maybe to either Pakistan or India, to become more connected to either of them. And if they went forward with that kind of a movement to do that, to try to decrease their geographic isolation. We could use that as an example of devolution. All right. Let's see. If we're talking about ethnic separatism, now there's a word for you, separatism, which is what we're talking about when we talk about devolution. And the example I have for you there is Spain. You see the map over there on the right side. And Spain has within it a couple of regions. One of it is the Basque country up there in the north, and then Catalonia. Both of them are part of Spain, but both of them, for ethnic, linguistic reasons, they would like to break away. They would like to separate from Spain. And this is something that has actually been ongoing here in more current times. They took a vote here within the last couple of years that they didn't get the result they wanted, but it's ongoing where they would like to separate themselves because they don't see themselves being as the same as the rest of the Spanish country. And so, they kind of want to do their own thing. And, and to flip that around, Spain has allowed them to act a little bit more kind of like almost kind of like autonomous regions, so that they don't just leave. So they got a little bit of that kind of that push-pull thing going in there. But when we talk about the Basques and the Catalonians in Spain, there's another example of ethnic separatism or devolution. Okay. Terrorism. It might seem like a strange one. It's like, how does that fit in with all this? Well, terrorism a lot of times at its roots has a group of people who aren't necessarily attached to a specific government. They're usually a group of people who don't even have a specific, an army, a military of their own, but usually have some kind of a political goal. Maybe they do want to separate from another group. Maybe they want independence of their own. Usually there's some kind of a political goal, or there's some kind of motivation to want to force some kind of political change, like it says there. And so because they don't have a state, because they don't have a military, they resort to the use of violence in non-traditional ways. They're not fighting battles on a battlefield. They're using violence against civilian targets to try to gain the change that they want. But that change is an example of devolution, because again, it's the idea of not having power concentrated in a central government, but having it instead kind of watered down and more at a kind of a localized or regional kind of a level. All right. So in that way, we can look at terrorism. I give you the example of Al Qaeda, who carried out the 9/11 attacks. We can look at ISIS, other terrorist groups. Okay. As examples of that. All right, economic devolution. This is when you have kind of push-pull going on with anything having to do with economics. I'm going to give you kind of an economic/environmental example. I'm not talking about Amazon, the delivery company. I'm talking about Amazon, the geographic region down in South America. Most of it in Brazil, but kind of spilling out into some other parts of South America as well. And what we've seen is a devolutionary movement in parts of the Amazon basin where you have tribes people who still call the forest land of the Amazon home. But what they're fighting against are businesses, corporations that are trying to move into the Amazon and to figure out, they're looking for ways of being able to capitalize on natural resources. Some of them wanting to convert forest land into farming land. That's that picture you see on the right side. It's not just like, oh no, we have a forest fire. That's a deliberate fire, being burned to basically clear land that can then be converted from forest to farmland. And what the tribal people of the Amazon see is, our homeland, our way of life, everything, gone. And so, they're having to push back to try to save theirs. And so, this conflict that happens here, and the role that the Brazilian government plays in it and other governments in the basin area could be shown as an example of devolution in action. Okay. And then another example we can throw at you, or another form, is social devolution. And this one, I'll talk to you about Belgium. We've talked about Quebec up in Canada before. and that's definitely an area that they've tried to separate before from the rest of Canada, and basically based on language, more like French culture versus English speaking and more British culture. We see something similar to this going on in Belgium right now. Up in the northern part of Belgium is an area called Flanders, and the people culturally are referred to as the Flemish, and they identify more with people to the north of Belgium, Netherlands, Holland. Okay, they see themselves as being more Dutch. Their language, their culture, and they have pushed to try to maybe separate themselves away. Then down in the southern, what's called Wallonia, or the people who live there called Walloons, they identify more with the French, and cultural connections and even some linguistic connections. And so they wanted to kind of do their own little separatist movement to make themselves closer to the French. So you put both of them together there, and it is this big mass of social devolution going on. And we'll call that an example to go with that. And then the last one here, I'm not going to talk a lot because I think we've pretty much established what irredentism is. Whether we talked about our World War II example, Ukraine and Russia. I give you another one there, but I'm not going to dive in deep. This is another one that came about as a result of the breakup of the Soviet Union in the early 1990s. And again, just that whole idea of wanting to unite people because they were viewed as being culturally similar, that kind of an idea. But I'm not going to, I think you understand irredentism by now. All right. Let's take a look at devolution and the term fragmentation. Devolution often sparks independence movements. Again, think of the country you live in, folks. When we declared independence from the British, 1776, fought our independent War of Independence, Revolutionary War, which we won in 1783. That was an independence movement that had everything to do with devolution. We wanted to separate. We saw ourselves as being different from the British. Because of that geographic distance from England and the way that we had developed a distinctly different culture here in the American colonies. We wanted to turn that into an American state or country or even nation, if you want to keep going, that was separate from England, and that's where that independence movement came from. All right, was devolutionary kind of forces at work. So. Not the same, and this, I guess I could look at our American Civil War when I talk about fragmentation, because when you have one of those kind of movements, and think about it, the South wanted to declare independence from the rest of the United States in 1861 when our Civil War began. That's an example of fragmentation. Okay, the United States breaking up over that movement. And it was an unsuccessful attempt at fragmentation. The South loses the Civil War and is brought back into the Union, but it was an attempt at fragmentation. All right. Picture I have over there on the right side shows the current, I guess, we could call an attempt at fragmentation that's going on over in, Scotland right now. They would like to break away from the rest of Great Britain and kind of be their own independent country, their own independent state. And so they've been politically working on that. Nothing that's going to trigger a war. Probably going to end up coming down to a vote at some point as to whether Scotland really does follow through on that kind of that threat, that promise that they've made to separate themselves from the rest of England and Wales and that sort of thing. Okay, all right, let's revisit our friend autonomous regions we talked about way back in the beginning of all this, and then another idea, subnationalism. So remember, we talked about autonomous regions are parts of a country or a state that have a certain amount of freedom, and a lot of times they are seen as kind of still part of the country, but a little bit different. And a lot of times it is because of ethnic differences, right? I mean, we were just talking about the Basques and Catalonia. Okay, there we go. Good example there. But at the end of the day, Unless they finally follow through with a true independence movement and politically break away, fragment off from the other state, they still owe their allegiance to that state, okay? Both the Basques and the Catalonians, at the end of the day, they bow down to the authority of the government of Spain because they are still technically part of Spain. Yes, they have some freedoms that have been granted to them by Spain because they have those cultural differences. But when it's all said and done, they're still part of Spain. Okay, so that is the distinction we keep in mind there when we talk about the autonomous regions. Now, subnationalism, that's different. And when we talk about the Basques and the Catalonians, why they've been pushing so hard to want to break away, to separate, to fragment, is because there is this strong subnationalist movement that's going on where people are thinking that, yeah, politically, I guess we're still part of Spain, but my main allegiance isn't to the Spanish government. It's to the other people that live with me here in the Basque Country or the other people that live with me here in Catalonia, because those are the people that share my ethnicity, share my culture, share my linguistic differences. And when you have that kind of a feeling going on, that you're putting your allegiance to the group over the state, that's when we're talking about subnationalism. Okay? And some examples of subnationalism. Well, I'll go back to Quebec because it applies. Okay, a lot of people who live in Quebec, they believe that their chief allegiance is to the other French-speaking, French history, French culture. All those connections. That's where it is. Okay, other than versus Canada itself. Over in China, we have a movement that's been going on, one that's turned very kind of dark here in more recent times. The Uyghurs are located in the far western part of China. They are Muslim in terms of their religion. The rest of China, under the Chinese Communist Party, really have no official or recognized religion because the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, discourages having any kind of a connection to religion. And so the Uyghurs have suffered they would love to break away. They would love to fragment off of China and declare their independence. But China is not about to let them go. They want the territory. They want it to remain part of China. And we know from a lot of evidence that has been coming to light that China has cracked down on the Uyghurs in a real violent way. And rumors, maybe even more than rumors, that there are camps that the Uyghurs have been, almost like concentration camps. There have been accusations of genocide that China has committed against Uyghurs, those kinds of things. Okay, and then we can also talk about subnationalism with the whole Ukraine-Russia thing. That Ukrainians, part of that resistance, yes, part of its territoriality. Part of it, though, is, that they want to remain ethnically, culturally different than Russia, which is why they're fighting for their, what they see as their independence for their own country. All right, moving on. Balkanization, named after the Balkans region of southeastern Europe. You'll learn, if you take AP World History, you'll learn how this area plays a role in the beginnings of World War I. It has always been a hotbed of trouble, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that, as you can kind of see from the map over there on the right side, it's a whole lot of different countries all slammed together, okay? And many of these countries don't see eye to eye with each other. Some of it has to do with religious differences. Some of it has to do with language differences, cultural differences. And it has triggered wars. As recently as the 1990s, there were wars that have been fought in there. And so when we talked about that form of fragmentation that can end up breaking out into to violence, that's where we get into that concept, that idea of balkanization. All right. Okay. Let's see. As we're getting down here to the end, real quickly, I'm just gonna dump these up here, and then whoops, nope, too fast. There we go. All right. So before we cover our last little topic here, just thinking about globalization, big picture. Okay. Hopefully, it's really clear to you guys why globalization has such a tight connection to improvements in technology in just the past 100 years, whether we're talking about communications or transportation. It's what connects people. It's what, has made it so that, you can get from one place to another in mere hours instead of days, weeks. How we can be in touch with someone at the touch of a few buttons on a phone versus, taking days, weeks to communicate with each other. Technology has changed everything when it comes to globalization and made our world much, much smaller. Okay. It has also played that role, like we talked about, the Arab Spring revolts. Technology has allowed movements to take place much more quickly. Whether it's the use of smartphones to literally organize a revolution, political movements, that kind of a thing. So, the idea of subnationals and their ability to function and to grow has been aided by improvements in technology. Okay, it has also improved this idea of democratization, and when I say that, don't mix it up with our political party, the Democrats. Democratization is the idea of political movements that give more power to the people of a country versus just putting all the power in the hands of a few rulers or a single ruler. And we've seen this grow as a result of changes in technology, as people have a better window on the possibilities that are open to them. And this helps to drive sometimes the idea of reform at a government level or revolution at a government level, is because, the power of the people that comes from some of those improvements in technology. The downside is number 4, the digital divide. Most of the world has access to smartphones, but where we see the difference is, how fast is Wi-Fi connections or internet connections? Are you 3G, 4G, 5G, those kinds of things? And we do know that there is the haves and the have-nots in the world right now when it comes to technology. We live in a country that is one of the chief haves. We get the best of everything when it comes to technology, and we typically get it kind of, we're right on the cutting edge. Other parts of the world are usually trying to play catch up with us. And the gulf between where we are and where they are is what we call the digital divide when it has to do with technology, particularly computer-based technologies, cellular-based technologies, digital technologies. Okay, and just the idea. The more of those technologies you have, time-space compression just speeds up, and when you don't have access to them, it slows down. All right. The very last topic we cover is we revisit our friends centrifugal and centripetal. Okay. Remember, centrifugal are those forces that prevent unity from happening. And when we see this movement towards regionalism in some parts of the world, and again, if you're going to think about our own American Civil War, that was a regionalist movement that triggered our Civil War. The North and the South, 2 regions, North, South. Well, we see that still working in the 21st century. And, that is always going to be something that's going to be at odds with the bigger idea of unity. If you think about the way it worked out with our Civil War, definitely it divided our country. Okay. Hold on just a sec here. All right. Let's take a quick sneeze break. All right. Let's see. Where else are we going with this? We also see this preventing of unity when it comes to, talk about digital divide. There's also kind of a wealth divide, income gap that is growing when we look at the world. It seems like the wealthy countries like our own in the big picture are getting wealthier, while the countries that are behind feel like or are perceived to be getting poorer. Okay, and in some cases we can document it that they actually are getting poorer, and that works against any ideas of trying to bring countries together, working together. When people see that gulf, when there's that envy that they don't have what other countries have, that's where conflict comes from. That's where not a whole lot of positivity comes from. And especially when it has to do with just where you happen to be geographically is the reason. Okay, not because it's not because your people are smarter or more or work harder. It doesn't have to do with that. It has to just do where you happen to be on the globe. Okay? Oh, hold on. Dog outbreak. Got a dog uprising. Sorry about that. Had a canine independence movement going on. They tried, but not successful. All right. Anyhow, all right, let's get to the rest of this. So the a little couple ideas there having to do with centrifugal. All right, kind of those the stuff that divides, the stuff that creates trouble. All righty. On the flip side of that, centripetal. First one here, political identity. This is kind of a weird one to figure because I mean, especially when you look at my picture going, wait a minute, where's the unity there? Well, I mean, it doesn't matter what president we have of what party, typically you will hear them saying things about, I want to be a president for all Americans. I want to break down the walls. I want to break down, the divides between us, that sort of thing. And there's no getting around it. I mean, leaders anywhere around the world, or wherever they lead a country, whether they're a president, a prime minister, a premier, whatever it might be, they want to create unity among their people. I mean, how do you build support? How do you, maintain your own political power if your people are divided? And so, in our country, we're in kind of a strange kind of a crossroads here where, we try to build that unity, but we seem very dug in right now in terms of our political identities, which, is a real push-pull in terms of centrifugal versus centripetal. We would like to be centripetal, but, a lot of our identities leave us in kind of that centrifugal position. Okay. Same with nationalism. We would like that idea. We talk about nationalism, the way we identify with the rest of, the people of our country. And, you look at, the goal, the perfect would be, we'd all be, kind of lockstep, kind of going in the same direction and feel the same way. We know that the reality is different where we're at now, and people have different, in our own country, people have different ideas as to what it even means to be American at this point when we think of it through a nationalist kind of a lens. And so again, it's kind of a tightrope, that you walk when you're talking about centripetal. I mean, it should be a unifier for us. And there's been points in our history where it has unified us. You think about, during World War II, I mean, everyone was pretty much pitched in for the effort, those kinds of things. So, you can see examples of it. And then sometimes it is kind of walking more that line between centripetal and then, centrifugal. Okay. And then also, a lot of times when it comes to economic development, we want to try to get a country on the same page. Here in the United States, a lot of it's been about the fact that, a lot of elements of our country have kind of been allowed to kind of get old and kind of fallen apart on us. And so, when it comes to infrastructure, I mean, it's one of those things, not too many people are going to say, no, I don't want new roads, no, that bridge, let it fall down. I mean, things that you can get people behind you on and that sort of thing, which is a lot of times why you also hear our leaders, I think the last few presidents we have that, talk a lot about, we need to get serious about our infrastructure, kind of rebuilding our roads, rebuilding our, bridges and dams and, freeway systems, that kind of a thing. It's one of those that a lot of times will bring people together, right? And then yes, all the other cultural practices that a country might take on. Talked about. I mean, some of it's easier to pull off if you live in a more homogeneous kind of a country or state. It takes a lot more work to do in a multicultural country like our own. But, we have plenty of examples from history that it can be done, where unity can be achieved even in those kind of places. Okay. And I'll leave it on that kind of slightly positive note. I don't know. And I'd like to point out, I got this done under 30 minutes. I only have about 20 seconds to spare, but 30 minutes. Okay. All right. That's got us where we need. We'll talk about it really quickly when we see each other next week, just to make sure if there's any questions for clarification that we get those taken care of. All right. Um, Thank you all. Have a good weekend, and hopefully have a little bit more voice when I see you on Monday. Bye.